Hi everyone, welcome to the Platinum Girls Celebrity Show where I give love advice to the stars and the everyday woman. I am your host, Vanessa Taylor. Thank you so much for joining me. I am a coach for the book, The Rules, Time-Tested Secrets of Capturing the Heart of Mr. Right by Ellen Fine and Sherry Schneider. And one piece of dating advice that came up this week that I had to give to a client was she was in the midst of a conversation with the man that she's been seeing about whether they were going to become exclusive. What he told her as a way of saying, I don't think it's a good idea, is, I don't think that you're going to be happy with me. I think that you might get bored. Okay, she called me and said, is there anything that I can say in response to this? And I was like, no, you're not going to say anything in response to that. What he's really trying to tell you is that he's not interested. And she goes, no, he knows a lot about my past. He knows a bunch of things that have happened with a lot of other guys, which, by the way, this is why you don't talk about your ex-boyfriends a lot. But in any event, she said, this is all, things that he's going off of everything that I've told him. And I said, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because what he's trying to tell you is that, in a way, okay, first off, he doesn't think that she's capable of any depth. And secondarily, it's, I don't think that I'm going to be different than any of the other men that, that you've dated in the past. So I tried explaining to her, like, this guy really is not interested. And she said, well, what else can I say? And I was like, you can't say anything. You say nothing to him because really what you're trying to do at that point is convince him why you're worthy of being in a relationship with him. And that's not something that you need to sell yourself on. The rules will teach you that if a man really has to have you, he's not going to be putting up these little roadblocks and saying things to you to kind of turn you away from the notion of exclusivity with him. He's going to be really excited about wanting to have a relationship with you. And even if you're willing to, he's going to be thrilled. So that's how you can always tell, is if the guy is just, acting as if there's a reason why there is something wrong with you, that you shouldn't be in a relationship together. And he can be really crafty about it and make it seem like, well, all of these vibes that you've been putting out, or all of these things that you've been doing, like, well, you don't return my calls, or you don't drive to me, or all of these other things that men have been known to do when they're really not interested in a woman. So if a man starts giving you any red flags about why he doesn't want to be with you, oh my gosh, do not spend any time convincing him that he is wrong about you. Just simply say, oh, okay, and leave it at that. Now, if he comes around later, then you can discuss it then, but you are not going to sell yourself on a man. That's just beneath you, and you can move on and find another man that you don't have to do that with. So that's just my bit of dating advice for this week. I hope that helps. Okay, so a post that I wrote about yesterday was Iggy Azalea and Nick Young were together at his game, or at his Lakers game, actually I should say. He was playing and she was watching from the sidelines. And another person who happened to be watching from the sidelines as well was Rihanna. And according to the tabloid, she was really effusively cheering him on. So later that night, Iggy happened to post a photo on Instagram of the two of them laying in bed together, shoulder to shoulder, looking somewhat like they just finished having sex. And the tabloid speculated that maybe one of the reasons why Iggy did this was to let Rihanna know that he's mine. Okay, so I can't say for sure whether this was Rihanna's intention, was to kind of be divisive in this manner, but either way, let's say that it was, just for the sake of argument. Iggy shouldn't have done that. What she did was very childish, and it's a way of kind of being territorial with the guy, which is not something that a woman should do. If anything, she should act like she's so secure that, somebody like Rihanna who's cheering him on from the sidelines, that it doesn't even faze her because she's so secure in the relationship. Now, she might not really feel that way, and so she can go and, call her girlfriends and rant to her girlfriends about, how awful this other woman was. But it doesn't mean that she should then do something so public, like, hey, this is my guy and I'm in bed with him, and so therefore, he's with me and not with you. Like, no, just absolutely don't do anything like that. And one of the reasons, too, why you even shouldn't be worried about another woman who is hitting on your guy is because she's the aggressor. And everything that I teach, according to the rules and everything that was in my book, is that the woman who is the aggressor, it just doesn't work out as well with the guy because he gets kind of turned off. It's emasculating when the woman is always pursuing him. So you really don't have any need to worry if there's another woman hitting on your guy. Now, if he starts calling her or texting her or letting her know in some way that he's, fine with meeting up with a late night, rendezvous, then you have a problem on your hands. Okay, so moving on now to the Jennifer Aniston story that I wrote about earlier this week. I know that for some of you it was somewhat controversial because the story was essentially talking about how Jennifer Aniston moves too quickly in her relationships, and the stories that are always being written about her in the tabloids reflect a man wanting to get away from her. One of the things that I was addressing is that some people get upset by that notion that it's always Jennifer's fault. But the reality is that it is her fault. She is in control of being able to keep the guy around, but she doesn't do it correctly. She's always rushing things. Oh, Justin, move out from New York and move into my place, and then let's buy a new place together, and then I'm going to spend $30,000 on lighting, and we're going to go ahead and have a long engagement because, it just feels like I'm married already to you, and on and on and on. In the meantime, there's no solidifying the deal. There's no closing the deal on her end. So yes, what I'm trying to convey is that a woman really does have a lot of control when it comes to slowing things down with the man, and not letting everything just happen so fast. I mean, with Jennifer, it's like, oh, I'm an open book and you're welcome to come right into my life and, and do whatever you want. And that's just not something that you should do in terms of having your boundaries with the man. So even though it kind of does seem like gender stereotyping, in a way, I mean, I don't know, maybe it is to a lot of you, but at the same time, do we not acknowledge that there are inherent differences between the way that men and women operate in relationships? And that's what all of my work is structured upon. That's what the rules is structured upon, is getting women to recognize that, yes, this is the dynamic that is typically happening in relationships. And if you acknowledge it and if you act on it in a certain way, you're going to have a much easier go of it. And so that's all I was really trying to express with that post. Okay, and then the final thing that I want to discuss for this week was the Kimberly Paisley article that I wrote about. I had mentioned that somebody went up to Kimberly and told her at a party that there was a rumor going around that Brad was cheating with Carrie Underwood. And so most of you may remember that he hosted the CMAs, or the most recent CMAs, with Carrie. Now, apparently, Kimberly had no idea about the story, and so when she was told about it, she absolutely just started cracking up and thought it was the most hysterical thing in the world. So when I wrote my blog post, I was saying, hey, this is so great. She's a really secure married woman, like, hats off to her, and she doesn't even let it be known that she's got Google alerts going and she's keeping track of every little story about Brad. She's really making it known that she's just got a whole other bunch of things going on and doesn't have time to pay attention to all these little celebrity stories that come up. But one of my very astute readers who really loves Carrie contacted me and said, hey, there's a couple things that you might need to know. And by the way, this is great. I love it when my readers contact me to let me know that there could be more to the story that maybe I haven't caught. There's so much flying my way that it's hard for me to catch on to every single little nuance that's happening with celebrities and their relationships. So again, any feedback is always great. But what she ended up telling me was that Brad goes and surprises Carrie at her concerts. Occasionally he's been known to send her flowers, and I guess when she was on set for The Sound of Music, he showed up there as well, and her husband was nowhere in sight. Okay, again, the reader and I both hope that nothing is true, but at the same time, can you necessarily wonder why tabloid stories are speculating that things are happening between Carrie and he when, he's showing up on set and when he is sending flowers and going to her concerts and making it known that they're very, very close. Towards that end, if there's anything that does come out later, then I'm going to find out that maybe Brad really was messing around with Carrie, but that doesn't change Kimberly's reaction and how she really handled it like a pro and not letting anybody see that she was rattled. Sometimes in life, it is really having your best game face and your best foot forward that's going to take you far. So I'm going to wrap it up here for this week. You can follow my blog at www.platinumgirlcelebrityblog.com, and I want to give a quick plug to 2 books. So this is the most recent version of The Rules, Not Your Mother's Rules by Ellen Fine and Sherry Schneider. Really great book, you guys. You got to get it. And then my book, Text Love Power, answers all those questions that you have about texting and dating with men. Okay? And you can book a consult through my website at www.platinumgirl.com. And I hope that you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you really liked it, I hope that you share it. Okay, so again, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. I'm your host, Vanessa Taylor, saying goodbye to you from sunny Los Angeles, California. See you next week, guys. Bye.